The mahogany clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. when I arrived at the address I'd been given. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled into the circular driveway of what could only be described as a fortress disguised as a mansion. Tall iron gates had opened automatically at my approach, as though the house itself had been expecting me, as though it knew I would come, despite every instinct screaming at me to turn around and drive back to my safe, ordinary life. I was a psychologist. I'd built my practice on treating trauma, on helping people navigate the darkest corners of their minds. I'd worked with veterans haunted by war, abuse survivors rebuilding their shattered selves, people who'd witnessed horrors that would break most minds. I thought I'd seen it all. But nothing in my 14 years of practice had prepared me for the phone call I'd received 3 days ago. Dr. Conti. The voice had been smooth, professional, with just the slightest hint of an Italian accent. My employer requires your services. Your discretion is paramount. The compensation will be significant. I should have said no immediately, should have hung up and blocked the number. But the voice had mentioned a sum that would clear my student loans and pay off my deceased sister's medical bills that I'd inherited. Bills that kept me awake at night, that made me work 70-hour weeks just to stay afloat. What kind of services? I'd asked, already knowing I was making a mistake. Psychological treatment. My employer suffers from severe night terrors. He requires someone with your specific expertise in trauma therapy. The professional in me had been intrigued despite my caution. Night terrors in adults usually indicated deep-seated childhood trauma. It was my specialty, the area where I'd published 3 papers and given lectures at conferences. I'd need to meet with the patient first, I'd said. Conduct an initial assessment, and I only work out of my office. There had been a pause then. That won't be possible. My employer values his privacy above all else. You will come to his residence for all sessions. The arrangement is non-negotiable. Every ethical guideline I'd ever learned told me to refuse. House calls to unknown patients, especially at the rates being offered, suggested something illegal or dangerous or both. But then I'd looked at the stack of bills on my desk, at the eviction notice tucked beneath them that I'd been ignoring for 3 days. My sister Isabella had died 2 years ago from complications related to her chronic illness. The medical bills had been catastrophic, and as her only family, they'd become mine. I'd been paying them down slowly, sacrificing everything, my apartment, my car, any semblance of a social life. This one patient could change everything. So I'd said yes. God help me. I'd said yes. Now standing in front of the massive oak door of this fortress, I was questioning every decision that had led me here. The house was enormous, all stone and dark windows, with security cameras visible at every corner. This wasn't just wealth. This was the kind of money that came with secrets and danger. The door opened before I could knock. A man in a dark suit, easily 6 feet tall with the build of someone who spent hours in the gym, regarded me with expressionless eyes. "Dr. Conti," he said, not a question. "Follow me." He led me through a foyer that looked like it belonged in a European palace. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that was probably worth more than my entire education. But there was something cold about it all, sterile despite the obvious luxury, like a museum rather than a home. We walked through several corridors before stopping at a door at the far end of the east wing. The man knocked once, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Your doctor is here, Mr. Caruso." Mr. Caruso. The name sent a chill down my spine. I'd heard that name before, whispered in news reports about organized crime in Chicago, about a family that controlled half the city's underground operations. But surely this couldn't be that Caruso family. Surely I wasn't about to walk into a room with someone connected to the Mafia. The room beyond was a study, all dark wood and leather furniture, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lining 2 walls. And standing by the window, backlit by the city lights beyond, was a man who made my breath catch in my throat. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his white dress shirt perfectly. The top 3 buttons were undone, revealing a hint of tanned skin and dark hair. His black hair was styled back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and strong lines. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. Dark, almost black in the low light, they studied me with an intensity that made me feel simultaneously exposed and seen in a way I'd never experienced. "Dr. Conti," he said, his voice a low rumble with that same hint of Italian accent I'd heard on the phone. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Caruso," I managed, setting my briefcase down and trying to project the professional confidence I definitely wasn't feeling. "I understand you're experiencing night terrors." Something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I was getting straight to business. Directly to the point. I appreciate that. He moved away from the window, gesturing to a leather couch. "Please sit. Would you like something to drink? Espresso, perhaps? Or something stronger?" "Water is fine, thank you." I sat, pulling out my tablet and stylus, slipping into the familiar routine of an initial consultation. This was what I knew. This was where I was in control. He poured water from a crystal carafe into 2 glasses, then settled into the armchair across from me. Up close, I could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw that suggested he hadn't slept well in a long time. "Before we begin," I said, "I need to establish some ground rules. Everything you tell me is confidential, with only a few legal exceptions. If you're a danger to yourself or others, if there's evidence of child abuse, or if I'm subpoenaed by a court." "Understood." His gaze never left my face. "I also need to know. Are you currently under the care of any other mental health professionals? Are you taking any medications?" "No and no." He paused. "I don't trust easily, Dr. Conti. You're the first person I've allowed into this aspect of my life." The weight of that admission settled over me. This dangerous, powerful man was giving me access to his vulnerabilities. It should have felt like trust. Instead, it felt like a trap closing around me. "Tell me about the night terrors," I said. "When did they start?" For a long moment, he was silent. Then, "I was 7 years old when I watched my mother die." The clinical part of me noted this. Childhood trauma. Witnessing a parent's death. The human part of me felt my heart clench with unexpected sympathy. "She was shot," he continued, his voice eerily calm, as though he were discussing the weather rather than the most traumatic event of his life. 3 times, once in the chest, twice in the head. I was hiding in the closet of our old apartment. They didn't know I was there. I watched through the slats as the light left her eyes. I forced myself to keep writing, to maintain my professional demeanor, even as his words painted a horrific picture in my mind. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "That's an incredibly traumatic experience for a child to witness." "The night terrors started immediately after," he said. "For years I would wake up screaming, seeing her death over and over. My father, he didn't believe in therapy. Weakness, he called it. So I learned to manage them myself." "And recently? Have they gotten worse?" "They never really went away, Dr. Conti. I just became better at hiding them." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, and for a moment he looked younger, more vulnerable. "But 3 months ago something changed. They're more vivid now, more frequent. I'm sleeping maybe 2 hours a night before I wake up in a cold sweat, seeing her face." "What changed 3 months ago?" I asked, knowing that trauma symptoms often resurface when triggered by present circumstances. His jaw tightened. "That's not relevant to our sessions." It was the first time he'd refused to answer, and I noted it carefully. Something had triggered this resurgence, something he wasn't willing to discuss yet. Okay, I said. We can come back to that. For now, I'd like to establish a treatment plan. PTSD and trauma-related night terrors typically respond well to a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. But it requires commitment. Sessions at least twice a week, homework between sessions, possibly medication if the sleep disruption becomes too severe. Whatever it takes, he said. I need to sleep again, Dr. Conti. I need to stop seeing her die every time I close my eyes. There was something raw in his voice, a vulnerability that seemed at odds with everything else about him. The fortress he lived in, the security, the aura of controlled danger that emanated from him like heat. I can help you, I said, meaning it. But you need to be honest with me. Complete honesty, even about things that are difficult or painful to discuss. Can you promise me the same, Dr. Conti? He asked, his dark eyes searching my face. Complete honesty. The question caught me off guard. Of course, I'm always honest with my patients. Then be honest now. What do you know about me? About my family? I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. I know the Caruso name is connected to certain businesses in Chicago. I don't know specifics, and I don't need to know. My job is to treat your trauma, not judge your life. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. Most people would have run the moment they heard my name. I'm not most people, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. And everyone deserves help, Mr. Caruso. Everyone deserves to heal from their wounds. Call me Orlando, he said. If we're going to be spending so much time together, formality seems unnecessary. Professional boundaries are important, I countered. Mr. Caruso maintains that distance. And yet, you'll be delving into the darkest corners of my mind. His smile was slight but genuine. That's hardly distant, Dr. Conti. He had a point, but I wasn't ready to concede it. We can discuss boundaries as we progress. For now, I'd like to schedule our next session. How does Thursday evening work for you? Thursday is fine. Same time? I nodded, making a note on my tablet. And between now and then, I'd like you to keep a dream journal. Every time you have a night terror, write down everything you remember. The details, the emotions, anything that felt particularly vivid or significant. I'll do that. He stood as I gathered my things, and I realized our first session was over. It had felt shorter than the hour I'd blocked out, as though time moved differently in his presence. He walked me to the door of the study, and I became acutely aware of how tall he was, how his presence seemed to fill the space around me. Dr. Conti, he said as I was about to leave. Thank you for not running, for seeing me as more than just a name. Everyone has a story, Mr. Caruso, I replied. I'm just here to help you rewrite yours. The drive home should have been a relief, a chance to decompress from the intensity of that encounter. Instead, I found myself replaying every moment, every word, the vulnerability in his eyes when he spoke about his mother, the way his voice had dropped when he'd asked me to call him Orlando. I'd treated hundreds of patients in my career. I'd maintained professional boundaries with all of them, no matter how compelling their stories or how much I wanted to help them as human beings, rather than just as a clinician. But something about Orlando Caruso unsettled me in a way I couldn't quite name. It wasn't just his obvious danger or the wealth that surrounded him like armor. It was the way he'd looked at me, really looked at me, as though he could see past my professional facade to the woman beneath. And God help me, part of me wanted him to keep looking. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm that should have felt routine, but never quite did. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, I would drive to Orlando's fortress mansion, be escorted to his study by the same silent security guard, and spend an hour peeling back the layers of trauma that had shaped him into the man he'd become. We made progress. Slowly, carefully, I guided him through the techniques that had helped so many of my patients. The dream journal revealed patterns, recurring elements in his nightmares that we could address through EMDR. His mother's face, the sound of gunshots, the helpless feeling of watching from the closet while she died. But there were complications I hadn't anticipated. The first was professional. Orlando was perhaps the most intelligent, perceptive patient I'd ever worked with. He absorbed therapeutic concepts instantly, asked questions that showed he was thinking deeply about his own psychology, challenged my approaches in ways that forced me to refine my techniques. Working with him was intellectually stimulating in a way my other patients rarely were. The second complication was more dangerous. I was starting to look forward to our sessions, not just professionally, but personally. I found myself thinking about him between appointments, wondering how he was sleeping, whether the techniques we'd discussed were helping. I started dressing more carefully for his sessions, choosing outfits that were professional but flattering, applying makeup with more attention than I usually bothered with. And the way he looked at me had changed too. There was something new in his gaze now, something warmer than the cool assessment of our first meeting. Sometimes, when I was explaining a concept or guiding him through a relaxation exercise, I would glance up to find him watching me with an intensity that had nothing to do with therapy and everything to do with something I refused to name. I was walking a very dangerous line, and I knew it. It was during our 7th session that everything shifted. "I need to tell you something," Orlando said, bypassing our usual greeting as I settled into my chair. "Something I should have told you before we started this work." The tension in his voice put me on alert. "Okay, I'm listening." He stood, pacing to the window as he often did when discussing difficult topics. 3 months ago, the thing that triggered the worsening of my night terrors, it was a hit. Someone tried to kill me. My pen stilled on my tablet. "I see." "That's all you're going to say?" He turned to face me. "I just told you someone tried to murder me, and you just say, 'I see'?" "I'm your therapist, not your confessor," I said carefully. "My job isn't to judge your life, but to help you process the trauma in it. A near-death experience would absolutely trigger a resurgence in PTSD symptoms, especially for someone who witnessed a parent's murder as a child." He studied me for a long moment. "You're not afraid of me. Should I be? Most people are." He moved closer, and I fought the urge to lean back, to maintain distance. Most people hear the name Caruso and see a monster. "I see a man dealing with trauma," I said, though my heart was hammering. A man trying to heal from wounds that were inflicted on him as a child. Whatever else you are in the world outside this room, in here, you're my patient. That's all. "Is that really all I am to you, Dr. Conti?" His voice dropped lower. "Just a patient?" The question hung in the air between us, dangerous and tempting. This was it. The moment where I needed to reinforce professional boundaries, to shut down any suggestion of something more. "Yes," I said, though the word felt like a lie. "That's all you can be." Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, but also a kind of dark amusement, as though he knew I was lying and was content to wait for me to admit it. "Tell me about the attempt on your life," I redirected. "What happened?" He allowed the subject change, settling back into his chair. "The Silvestri family. They've been rivals of the Carusos for 3 generations. Enzo Silvestri, their current head, decided it was time to make a move. Car bomb. I wasn't in the vehicle, but my driver was. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Did he survive?" "No." Orlando's jaw tightened. Antonio had worked for my family for 20 years. He had a wife and 3 children. They're taken care of now, financially, but that doesn't bring him back. "Survivor's guilt," I noted. "You feel responsible for his death because he was driving your car." "I am responsible." If he hadn't been working for me, he'd still be alive. That's the trauma talking, I said gently. The Silvestris made the choice to plant that bomb. They're responsible, not you. In my world, Dr. Conti, responsibility isn't so clean-cut. He leaned forward. When you choose this life, when you accept the power and the wealth that comes with it, you also accept that people around you become targets. Antonio knew that, but knowing it doesn't make his death any less my burden to carry. We spent the rest of the session processing his survivor's guilt, the way it had connected in his mind to his mother's death, to the 7-year-old boy who'd hidden in a closet instead of trying to save her. You were a child, I reminded him. There was nothing you could have done. The adults in your life should have protected you, not put you in a position to witness such violence. My father said I was lucky, Orlando said. That hiding was the smart choice. That if I'd come out, I'd be dead too. He saw it as a lesson in survival. That's a cruel thing to tell a traumatized child. My father was a cruel man, but he kept me alive, kept me strong. In our world, weakness is death. After the session ended and I was driving home, Orlando's words echoed in my mind. Weakness is death. What did that make this growing attraction between us? What did it make the way my pulse quickened when he looked at me? The way I found myself thinking about him at odd moments throughout my day? I pulled over at a red light and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. A voicemail left while I'd been in session. Dr. Conti, a voice I didn't recognize, said, "We need to speak about your patient, Orlando Caruso. This arrangement cannot continue. You're being watched." The message ended abruptly. Ice flooded through my veins. Someone knew about our sessions. Someone was watching me. I should have called the police. Should have reported the threatening message immediately. But some instinct held me back. In Orlando's world, the police weren't always allies, and if someone was watching me, they would know if I went to the authorities. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. I pulled up Orlando's number, the one that had been programmed into my phone after our first session for emergencies. He answered on the first ring. "Serafina? What's wrong?" The use of my first name should have bothered me. It didn't. "I received a threatening phone call," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "Someone knows about our sessions. They said I'm being watched." Silence on the other end. Then, "Where are you?" "Stopped at a red light on Michigan Avenue. Drive to my house. Now. Don't go home. Don't stop anywhere. Just come here." "Orlando, I can't just—" "Someone threatened you because of me," he interrupted, his voice hard. "That makes you my responsibility. Come here. We'll figure this out." The light turned green. I should have driven home, should have handled this through proper channels. Instead, I turned the car around and headed back toward his fortress. When I arrived, Orlando was waiting at the door personally. No security guard intermediary this time. He looked different, more dangerous. The top buttons of his shirt were undone and his sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars I'd never noticed before. "Inside," he said, his hand at the small of my back, guiding me through the door. The touch sent electricity through me despite the circumstances. He led me not to his study, but to a different room, some kind of security center, with monitors showing dozens of camera feeds from around the property and beyond. "Play the message," he commanded, and I did, putting my phone on speaker. We listened together to the threatening words, and I watched his expression darken with each syllable. "Enzo Silvestri," he said when it ended. "That's one of his men." I recognized the voice. "The same family that tried to kill you?" "The same." He pulled out his own phone, typing something rapidly. "They've been looking for a weakness, a way to get to me, and apparently they think they've found one." The implication hit me like a punch. Me. They think I'm your weakness. which means you're in danger. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. I'm sorry, Serafina. I never intended for you to be dragged into this world. You hired me to be your therapist, I said. That was always dragging me into your world, wasn't it? He moved closer, and suddenly we were standing too near, well within the professional boundaries I'd been so careful to maintain. I hired you because I needed help. I kept you because... He stopped, his jaw tightening. Because why? I heard myself ask, my voice barely a whisper. Because somewhere in the past 7 sessions you stopped being just my therapist. His hand came up, fingers tracing my jawline with devastating gentleness. You became something more. Something I didn't plan for. Something dangerous. I should have stepped back. Should have reminded him of professional ethics, of the power imbalance inherent in the therapeutic relationship. Should have done any of the things my training had prepared me for. Instead, I leaned into his touch. This is wrong, I whispered. Everything about this is wrong. I'm your therapist. You're my patient. We can't... I know. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. But tell me you don't feel it too. This pull between us. Tell me I'm alone in this. I can't, I admitted. I can't tell you that, because it would be a lie. The confession hung between us for a heartbeat. Then his mouth was on mine, and I was kissing him back with a desperation that shocked me. This wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce, consuming, a release of 7 weeks of tension and denial. His hands were in my hair, tilting my head back to deepen the kiss. Mine fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. 7 years of professional training, of carefully maintained boundaries, of ethical guidelines drilled into my head, and I was throwing it all away for this moment, for this man. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. God, I whispered. What did we just do? Exactly what we've both wanted to do since the first session, he said, his voice rough. Don't pretend you haven't been thinking about it. Wanting something doesn't make it right. I pulled away, putting distance between us. I'm your therapist, Orlando. This violates every ethical guideline that exists. I could lose my license, my entire career. Then quit being my therapist. His eyes held mine. Be something else instead. It doesn't work that way. Even if I terminate our therapeutic relationship, there's a minimum 2-year waiting period before we could pursue anything personal. And that's assuming... I stopped, shaking my head. This is insane. We barely know each other. Don't we? He challenged. You've been inside my head for 7 weeks, Serafina. You know things about me that no one else knows. You've seen my wounds, my fears, my nightmares. If that's not knowing someone, what is? He had a point, but I couldn't let myself acknowledge it. Professional knowledge isn't the same as personal knowledge. What you've shown me in therapy isn't the whole picture of who you are. Then, let me show you the rest. He moved closer again. Let me take you to dinner. Let me court you properly, the way you deserve. While the Silvestris are threatening me, while someone is watching my every move. His expression hardened. That's exactly why you should stay close to me. Under my protection, you're safe. On your own, you're vulnerable. So my choices are, violate my professional ethics and lose everything I've built, or go home and wait for the Mafia to kill me. There's a third option. His voice dropped. Stay here. Tonight. Let me keep you safe while we figure this out. Absolutely not. Serafina. No. I grabbed my purse, my keys, desperate to escape before I did something else I'd regret. This was a mistake. All of it. I'm terminating our therapeutic relationship effective immediately. I'll send you a list of referrals to other trauma specialists who can help you. You can't run from this. His voice followed me as I headed for the door. From me. From what's between us. Watch me. I made it to my car before the tears started. Made it halfway home before I had to pull over, my hands shaking too badly to drive safely. What had I done? I'd kissed a patient. Violated the most fundamental rule of my profession. And the worst part? Even knowing it was wrong, even knowing I could lose everything, all I wanted was to turn the car around and go back. My phone buzzed. A text from Orlando. You're still being followed. Black sedan, 3 cars back. Don't go home. Please. I checked my rearview mirror. There it was. A black sedan with tinted windows, keeping a careful distance but definitely following me. The phone buzzed again. Come back. I'll sleep on the couch. You can have the guest room. Just don't put yourself in danger to avoid me. Every rational thought told me to drive to a police station, to report the stalking, to handle this through proper channels. But I thought about Antonio, Orlando's driver who'd died in a car meant for his boss. I thought about the Silvestri family and their 3-generation vendetta. I thought about how the police in Chicago might not be the allies I hoped they'd be. And I thought about Orlando, about the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd asked me to stay, about the way he'd looked at me like I was something precious and necessary. I made a U-turn at the next intersection and drove back toward the fortress. This time, when Orlando opened the door, I didn't let him speak. Ground rules, I said. Separate rooms, no more kissing. Tomorrow I start looking for another therapist to take over your treatment. And we figure out how to handle the Silvestri situation without... I gestured vaguely between us. Without this becoming more complicated than it already is. Agreed, he said, though something in his eyes suggested he had no intention of following those rules long-term. Come inside, Serafina. Let me keep you safe. As I crossed the threshold into his fortress for the second time that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something far more dangerous than the Mafia threats outside. I was walking straight into Orlando Caruso's world. And unlike the professional boundaries I'd just shattered, there might be no way back from this. The guest room Orlando showed me to was, like everything in his house, both luxurious and slightly impersonal. A 4-poster bed with expensive linens, an attached bathroom with a soaking tub, a walk-in closet that was currently empty. It looked like a high-end hotel room. Beautiful, but untouched by any real personality. I'll have some clothes brought over tomorrow, Orlando said from the doorway. Toiletries are in the bathroom. If you need anything during the night... I'll be fine, I interrupted, maintaining the distance we'd agreed upon. Thank you for letting me stay. He nodded, but didn't leave immediately. Serafina, about earlier. We're not discussing it tonight, I said firmly. I'm exhausted and overwhelmed and I need to sleep. We can talk tomorrow. Tomorrow, then. He moved to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm not sorry it happened. Only that it complicated things for you. After he left, I sank onto the bed, my mind racing. What had I gotten myself into? 24 hours ago, I'd been a respected psychologist with a thriving practice and a clean ethical record. Now I was hiding in a mobster's mansion because his enemies had threatened me, having crossed professional lines I'd sworn never to cross. I pulled out my phone and did what I should have done hours ago. I called my best friend, Nina, another psychologist I'd known since grad school. Sarah? It's almost midnight. What's wrong? I did something terrible, I said, and then the whole story came pouring out. The mysterious patient, the night terrors, Orlando's revelation about the assassination attempt, the threatening phone call, the kiss. All of it. Nina was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Okay, she said finally. First, you need to file a formal termination of the therapeutic relationship. Document everything. The threat, your decision to end treatment, all of it. That's your first line of protection, if this goes to the licensing board. I know, I will. Second, you need to stay away from him, Sarah. I'm serious. Even if you formally terminate, you can't pursue anything personal. Not for years. You know this. I do know this. I pressed my fingers against my eyes. But Nina, the Silvestris are real. They really are threatening me. I can't just go home and pretend this isn't happening. Then you go to the FBI. Organized crime threats are their jurisdiction. And say what? That my patient who I've been secretly treating hired me under suspicious circumstances and now his mob rivals are after me? That sounds great for my career. Nina sighed. This is bad, Sarah. Really bad. What do you want from me? Permission to throw away everything you've worked for because you're attracted to a dangerous man? No, I said quietly. I want you to tell me I'm not crazy. That anyone in my position would have made the same choices. You're not crazy, but you are human. And this Orlando, he's not just a patient to you anymore. Is he? I thought about the way he'd looked at me. The vulnerability beneath the danger, the intelligence and pain and unexpected gentleness. No, he's not. Then you're in deeper trouble than just ethical violations. Nina's voice softened. Be careful, Sarah. Men like him, they're compelling for a reason, but that doesn't make them safe. After we hung up, I tried to sleep, but memories kept surfacing. Memories I'd been suppressing for 2 years, since the night my sister Isabella died. Flashback, 2 years ago. Sarah, I need you to do something for me. Isabella's voice was weak, ravaged by the illness that was slowly destroying her body. We were in her hospital room, the machines beeping their steady rhythm, marking time until the inevitable. Anything, I'd said, holding her hand. What do you need? After I'm gone, I need you to find out the truth about the night Marcus died. Marcus Conti, her husband, had died in a car accident 6 months before Isabella's diagnosis. A drunk driver, the police had said. Wrong place, wrong time. Bella, what are you talking about? Promise me, Sarah. Her grip tightened with surprising strength. There's a safety deposit box. Key is in my jewelry box, the one Mom gave me. Inside you'll find documents about Marcus's business dealings, about the people he was involved with. I didn't understand it all, but I know it wasn't just an accident. Promise me you'll find the truth. I promise, I'd said, thinking it was the morphine talking, the illness making her paranoid. But after she died, I'd found the key, found the safety deposit box, found documents that suggested Marcus Conti had been laundering money for the Silvestri family, and that he'd been planning to testify against them when he died. I'd been too grief-stricken, too overwhelmed by medical bills and funeral arrangements, and my own practice to pursue it further. I'd locked the documents away in my own safety deposit box and tried to forget about them. But now, with the Silvestris threatening me, I wondered if that had been a mistake. If somehow they knew what I had. What I knew. Present. I must have finally fallen asleep because I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere in the house. For a moment, I was disoriented, forgetting where I was. Then memory crashed back. Orlando's house. The Silvestri threats. The kiss. The complete implosion of my professional ethics. I found clothes laid out on a chair by the window. Not the professional suits I usually wore, but comfortable designer items, jeans and a cashmere sweater that were somehow exactly my size. How had Orlando known? When I emerged from the guest room, following the smell of coffee, I found him in the kitchen. He'd changed from last night's dress shirt into a simple black t-shirt that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, and he was making what looked like a full Italian breakfast. Buongiorno, he said, glancing up with a slight smile. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I made options. Espresso, cappuccino, cafe latte. Cornetti, frittata, fresh fruit. You cook. I couldn't keep the surprise out of my voice. My grandmother taught me. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was only half a man. He poured espresso into a small cup. How do you take it? As it comes, I said, accepting the cup. The espresso was perfect, strong, and smooth with just a hint of sweetness. We need to talk, he said, gesturing for me to sit at the kitchen island. About the Silvestris, about us, about what happens next. There is no us, I said, even as I accepted a plate of still-warm cornetto. I'm terminating our therapeutic relationship today. I'll provide referrals to other therapists who can help you with your PTSD. And then I go back to my life. You still think you can go back? He leaned against the counter, his dark eyes studying me. Serafina, they threatened you because of me. Ending therapy doesn't end that threat. Then I go to the police, the FBI, someone, and tell them what? That you've been secretly treating a mob boss? That his enemies are threatening you? How do you think that plays out for your career? I set down my cup harder than I'd intended. So what exactly are you suggesting? That I just stay here indefinitely? Hide in your fortress while you fight your mob war? I'm suggesting you let me protect you while we figure out a more permanent solution. I don't need protection. I stopped, shaking my head. This is insane. All of it. Is it? He moved closer. Or is it the first honest thing either of us has done in weeks? We've been dancing around this attraction since our first session, Serafina. Pretending it was just professional, just therapeutic rapport. Last night we stopped pretending. Last night was a mistake. Was it? He was close now. Too close. Because from where I'm standing, last night was the first truth in a lot of lies. Stop. I put up a hand, needing space to think. Stop being charming. Stop making this sound rational. What we did last night was a violation of ethics. It doesn't matter that I'm attracted to you. It doesn't matter what I feel. There are rules, Orlando. Boundaries that exist for good reasons. Rules, he repeated, something dark flickering in his eyes. I've spent my entire life following rules, Serafina. My father's rules about strength and weakness, the family's rules about loyalty and blood, society's rules about who gets to have power and who gets to be crushed. And where did those rules get me? Alone in this fortress, seeing my mother's death every time I close my eyes. Your trauma doesn't justify. I'm not asking for justification, he interrupted. I'm asking for honesty. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me you can walk away from what's between us, and I'll let you go. I'll find another therapist. I'll deal with the Silvestris myself. You can go back to your life and pretend the past 7 weeks never happened. I opened my mouth to do exactly that. To tell him it was just transference, just the intimacy of therapy creating the illusion of connection. But the words wouldn't come, because they would be a lie. Whatever this was between us, it was real. Dangerous and complicated and possibly catastrophic for my career. But real. I can't, I whispered. I can't tell you that. Something fierce and triumphant flashed in his eyes. He took another step closer, his hand coming up to cup my face. Then stop fighting this. Stop running from what we both know is inevitable. It's not inevitable. We have choices. We can choose to do the right thing. And what is the right thing, Serafina? His thumb stroked my cheekbone. Walking away from each other, denying what we feel? Is that really better than taking a risk on something real? There are rules. To hell with the rules, he said, and then his mouth was on mine again. This kiss was different from last night's desperate collision. This was slower, deeper, a claiming rather than an explosion. His hands framed my face as though I were something precious, and I found myself leaning into him, my own hands fisting in his shirt. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and shaking. "This can't happen," I said, even as my body betrayed me by staying pressed against his. "Not now. Not for years. The ethics... I'll wait," he said simply. 2 years, 5 years, whatever your ethics board requires. But don't ask me to pretend I don't want you. Don't ask me to let you walk back into danger because you're afraid of breaking rules. A door slammed somewhere in the house, breaking the moment. Orlando's head snapped up, instantly alert. "Stay here," he commanded, and something in his voice had changed. This wasn't the vulnerable patient or the man who'd been kissing me. This was someone else entirely. Someone dangerous. He moved toward the sound, with a fluid grace that reminded me of a predator, and I stayed frozen in the kitchen, my heart hammering. Voices in the hallway. Orlando's, low and controlled, and someone else's, angry, raised. Then Orlando was back, his expression dark. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Enzo Silvestri just sent a message. He wants to meet." "About what?" Orlando's jaw tightened. "About you." The meeting was set for that evening at a neutral location, a restaurant in Little Italy that apparently served as neutral ground for Chicago's various crime families. Orlando insisted I stay at his house, surrounded by security, while he went alone. I insisted on going with him. "Absolutely not," he said for the 5th time. "You don't understand how dangerous this is. Serafina, Enzo Silvestri is not a man who makes idle threats. Which is exactly why you shouldn't go alone." I was packing the few items I'd brought with me back into my purse. "If he wants to talk about me, I should be there. If he sees you, if he knows how much you mean to me, he'll use that." Orlando's frustration was evident. "The best way to protect you is to keep you away from him." "How much I mean to you." I stopped packing, turning to face him. 24 hours ago, you were my patient. Now I mean enough that seeing us together would be dangerous?" He had the grace to look slightly abashed. "You know what I meant." "Do I?" I challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks a lot like you trying to control a situation by controlling me. And I don't respond well to being controlled, Orlando." Something shifted in his expression. "Is that what your ex did? Try to control you?" The question caught me off guard. "How did you know about my ex?" "I did my research before hiring you. Derek Morrison, investment banker, relationship lasted 3 years. Ended badly about a year ago." "You had me investigated?" I should have been angry, should have felt violated. But somehow, coming from Orlando, it just felt practical. "I investigate everyone who enters my life, Serafina. It's how I stay alive." He moved closer. "But that's not an answer. Did he try to control you?" I thought about Derek's subtle manipulations, the way he'd gradually isolated me from friends, made me question my own judgment, turned his jealousy and possessiveness into evidence of how much he loved me. "Yes," I said quietly. "He did. And I won't let that happen again. Not with anyone." "I'm not trying to control you." Orlando's voice softened. "I'm trying to protect you. There's a difference." The difference is often academic to the person being protected. He was quiet for a moment, then, "Come with me, then. But you follow my lead. You stay where I tell you to stay. You don't engage with Enzo unless I say it's safe. Agreed?" It was a compromise, which I hadn't expected from him. Agreed. The restaurant, Gianni's, looked innocuous from the outside. Just another Italian place in a neighborhood full of them. But the security was immediately evident. Men in dark suits stationed at the entrance, at the corners, watching every approach with practiced vigilance. Orlando's hand settled at the small of my back as we entered, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. I tried not to lean into it, tried to maintain some semblance of professional distance. I failed. Enzo Silvestri was waiting at a table in the back, flanked by two men who looked like they could break me in half without much effort. He was older than I'd expected, perhaps in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd once been handsome before cruelty had etched itself into every line. "Caruso," he said as we approached. His eyes moved to me, cold and assessing. "And you brought the good doctor. How trusting of you." "You wanted to talk," Orlando said. "We're here. Talk." Enzo gestured for us to sit, and Orlando pulled out my chair before taking his own seat beside me, close enough that I could feel the tension radiating from him. "Your doctor has been causing problems," Enzo said conversationally, as though discussing the weather. "My men report that she's been staying at your house, that you've been quite protective of her. This suggests a vulnerability, Caruso, and vulnerabilities are dangerous in our line of work." "Dr. Conti is my therapist," Orlando replied evenly. "Nothing more." "Is that so?" Enzo's smile was unpleasant. "Then you won't mind if I have a conversation with her. Purely professional, of course." Before Orlando could respond, Enzo turned his attention to me. "Tell me, Dr. Conti, what do you know about your late brother-in-law, Marcus Conti?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Marcus Conti, married to your sister Isabella, died in a car accident about 3 years ago. Does that refresh your memory?" My mouth went dry. What does my brother-in-law have to do with any of this? "He worked for me," Enzo said. "Money laundering, primarily. He was very good at it, until he decided to grow a conscience and threatened to go to the federal prosecutors." Orlando's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tightly. A warning or comfort, I couldn't tell. "Marcus's death was an accident," I said, though my voice shook. "Was it?" Enzo leaned back in his chair. "Or was it a message about what happens to people who betray their obligations?" "You killed him." The realization felt like ice in my veins. "You murdered my brother-in-law." "I removed a liability," Enzo corrected. "Just as I'm prepared to remove other liabilities who threaten my business interests. Which brings us to you, Dr. Conti." "She has nothing to do with your business," Orlando said, his voice dangerous. "Leave her out of this." "Does she?" Enzo pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "Marcus kept very detailed records of his work for my organization, records that could be quite damaging if they fell into the wrong hands. Records that I believe are currently in your sister's safety deposit box, Dr. Conti. The same box you've been paying the annual fee on for the past 2 years. How did he know? How could he possibly know about the safety deposit box? "I don't have any records," I lied. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please don't insult my intelligence. Marcus told his wife everything before he died, and your sister, being the devoted woman she was, passed that information to you on her deathbed. I need those records, Dr. Conti, and you're going to give them to me." "And if I refuse?" Enzo's smile was cold. "Then I'll make sure the medical licensing board learns about your inappropriate relationship with Mr. Caruso. Such a shame. A promising career destroyed by ethical violations. Of course, that's the least of your worries. Car accidents happen all the time, Dr. Conti. Just ask your brother-in-law." Rage flooded through me, burning away the fear. "You son of a—" Orlando's hand tightened on mine, cutting off my words. "We need a moment," he said to Enzo, "to discuss this privately." "Of course. Take all the time you need." Enzo's smugness was evident. "But understand my patience has limits. I want those records by the end of the week. Deliver them and Dr. Conti can return to her peaceful life. Refuse and, well," he shrugged. We've already established what happens to people who don't cooperate. Orlando practically dragged me from the table, out a side door into an alley behind the restaurant. The moment we were alone, I turned on him. "Did you know?" I demanded. "Did you know about Marcus? About the Silvestris? About any of this?" "No." His face was grim. "I swear to you, Serafina, I didn't know. But you investigated me. How did you miss that my brother-in-law was laundering money for the mob? I investigated your professional background, your credentials. I didn't go digging into your family's history." He gripped my shoulders. "Listen to me. Enzo is playing a game. He's trying to isolate you, to make you feel like you have no choices. But you do." "What choices? Give him the records and let him destroy evidence of murder? Or refuse and end up like Marcus? Or option 3, Orlando's voice dropped. "You give me the records. Let me handle Enzo my way." "Your way? What does that mean?" "It means I protect what's mine," he said. "And you're mine, Serafina, whether you want to admit it or not. That means Enzo doesn't get to threaten you. That means he doesn't get to use you against me. That means he becomes a problem I solve permanently." The implication was clear. Orlando was talking about killing Enzo Silvestri. "No," I said immediately. "No, I won't be responsible for someone's death." "You won't be. I will." His hands framed my face. "This is what I do, Serafina. This is my world. Let me handle it." "By starting a war? By killing people? That's not a solution, Orlando. That's just more violence. It's the only language men like Enzo understand." I pulled away from him, my mind racing. "There has to be another way. The FBI, witness protection. You think the FBI will protect you better than I can. You think witness protection is a better life than the one I can give you. At least it's a life where I don't have to compromise my ethics every single day." The words hung between us like a sword. Orlando's expression hardened. "Your ethics," he repeated. "Your precious ethics that say we can't be together. That say I should have stayed broken and traumatized because seeking help somehow violated the natural order of things. That's not fair, isn't it? You came into my life offering healing, offering hope that maybe I could sleep through the night without seeing my mother's death. And now you're telling me that hope was a lie, because your ethics matter more than what we feel." "They have to matter," I said desperately. "If they don't matter, if we just throw out every rule, every boundary, then what are we? How are we any different from the people who killed Marcus?" "We're different because we're choosing each other," Orlando said. "Because what's between us is real, not manipulation or violence or control." "Is it?" I challenged. "Or is this just Stockholm Syndrome dressed up as romance? You're protecting me from a threat that exists because of you. You're offering me safety that I wouldn't need if we'd never met. How is that different from creating a problem so you can be the solution?" He flinched as though I'd struck him. "Is that really what you think? That I'm manipulating you?" I don't know what to think anymore. Tears were streaming down my face now. 2 days ago, I had a career I was proud of. Ethics I could stand behind. Now I'm hiding in a mobster's house while another mobster threatens to kill me if I don't hand over evidence of murder. Tell me, Orlando, how exactly is this better than my old life? Before he could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "What?" he answered curtly, then listened. "When? How many?" A pause. "Secure the house. I'm on my way." He ended the call and looked at me. "We need to go. Now." "What happened?" "The Silvestris just hit one of my warehouses. 3 of my men are dead." The violence I'd been trying so hard to avoid had just become immediate and real. This wasn't theoretical anymore. People were dying in this war between families. "Get in the car," Orlando commanded. already moving toward his vehicle. "We need to get you somewhere safe." "I'm not going back to your house," I said. "I'm not hiding while people die because of some documents in a safety deposit box." "Serafina, no." I stood my ground. "This ends now. I'm going to get those records and turn them over to the FBI. Let them handle the Silvestris. Let them protect me if they can. But I won't let more people die because I was too afraid to do the right thing. The FBI can't protect you like I can." "Maybe not. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror." Orlando studied me for a long moment. Then, surprising me, he nodded. "Okay, we'll do it your way, but on one condition." "What condition?" "I come with you, every step. The FBI, witness protection. Whatever happens next, I'm there. Not as the man who's protecting you, as the man who loves you." The declaration should have felt manipulative, timed to make me emotional and cloud my judgment. Instead, it felt like the truest thing either of us had said in days. "You don't love me," I whispered. "You barely know me. I know you're brilliant and brave. I know you see the world in shades of right and wrong when my whole life has been gray. I know you make me want to be better than I am. That's enough to love, Serafina. That's everything." Before I could respond, gunfire erupted from inside the restaurant. Orlando pushed me behind him, his body a shield between me and the danger. "Get down!" But I'd already seen them. Enzo's men, guns drawn, shooting at Orlando's security detail in what had supposedly been neutral ground. This war I'd been trying to prevent, it had just begun, and I was right in the middle of it. The next 72 hours existed in a blur of safe houses, encrypted phone calls, and FBI agents who looked at me with varying degrees of suspicion and sympathy. I'd turned over Marcus's records, spent hours giving statements about the Silvestris' threats, and agreed to protective custody while they built their case. Orlando had been true to his word. He'd stayed by my side through all of it, even when the FBI agents tried to separate us, even when they suggested that his presence was a conflict of interest. He'd simply looked at them with those dark, dangerous eyes and said, "Where she goes, I go. That's non-negotiable." Surprisingly, they'd backed down. Now I sat in a bland hotel room somewhere outside the city, watching Orlando pace like a caged wolf while we waited for news about the FBI's raid on Enzo's operations. "Stop," I said finally. "You're making me dizzy." He stopped, turning to face me. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his dress shirt wrinkled from 3 days of continuous wear. But he was still the most compelling person I'd ever met. "I should have protected you better," he said. "Should have seen this coming. You couldn't have known about Marcus, about the documents. I should have." He crossed to sit beside me on the generic hotel bed. "I failed you, Serafina. I brought you into this world and then couldn't keep you safe from it. You didn't fail me." I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. "You stayed. Even when it was dangerous, even when you could have walked away, you stayed. I'll always stay." His thumb stroked across my knuckles. "That's what love means. Staying when it's hard, being there when it's dangerous, choosing each other over everything else." "Orlando, I know. 2 years. Ethics. Professional boundaries." He brought our joined hands to his lips. "I'll wait, Serafina. I told you I would. But I need you to know that when those 2 years are up, I'm coming for you, properly, the way you deserve." Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Orlando was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between me and the entrance. "It's Agent Morrison," a voice called from outside. Orlando checked the peephole, then opened the door to admit the FBI agent who'd been our primary contact through all this. "We got him," Agent Morrison said without preamble. "Enzo Silvestri and 17 of his top lieutenants. The evidence from the Conti documents, Combined with the testimony we've been gathering for years, it's enough. He's going away for the rest of his life. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. It's over? The immediate threat is over, Morrison confirmed. Though I'd recommend you both maintain security precautions for a while. The Silvestri organization is broken, but there are always loyalists looking for revenge. What about witness protection? I asked. Do I still need to enter the program? Morrison glanced between Orlando and me. That's your choice, Dr. Conti. The threat is significantly reduced now, but if you want a fresh start, a new identity, we can provide that. A fresh start, a new identity, a life where I'd never met Orlando Caruso, never crossed those ethical lines, never fallen in love with a man I was supposed to be healing. It should have been tempting, should have been exactly what I wanted. No, I heard myself say. I don't want witness protection. Orlando's hand found mine again, squeezing tightly. After Agent Morrison left with promises to keep us updated on the trial proceedings, Orlando and I were finally alone for the first time in 3 days. You could have taken it, he said quietly. Fresh start, clean slate, no complicated mobster in your life. I could have, I agreed, but I didn't want to. Why not? I turned to face him fully. Because running from my problems hasn't worked out well for me historically. I ran from my marriage to Derek, ran from dealing with Marcus's death. Running just meant the problems followed me until I was forced to confront them anyway. And you're ready to confront this? Us. I'm ready to try. I took a breath. I'm formally terminating our therapeutic relationship. I've already filed the paperwork with the licensing board. And yes, that means we wait. 2 years minimum before we can pursue anything personal. But Orlando? Yes. I'm willing to wait, if you are. His smile was the first genuine one I'd seen from him in days. Serafina Conti, are you asking me to date you in 2 years? I'm asking if you're serious about this, about us, about waiting and doing things right. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. He pulled me closer. 2 years. I'll spend every day of those 2 years proving I'm worthy of you. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do. His voice grew serious. I told you in one of our sessions that I wanted to be better than my father. Better than the life I was born into. You make me want that more than ever, Serafina. You make me want to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. You already are that man. Not yet, but I will be. He pressed his forehead against mine. I'll go to therapy with someone else. Deal with my PTSD properly. Work on legitimizing more of my business holdings. By the time those 2 years are up, I'll be someone you can be proud of. I'm already proud of you, I whispered. You stayed when you could have run. You put yourself at risk to protect me. You're facing your trauma instead of hiding from it. That's not weakness, Orlando. That's strength. We stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, not kissing because we'd agreed not to cross that line again until the ethics waiting period was over. But the intimacy was just as profound. Maybe more so because it was chosen rather than compulsive. What will you do? Orlando asked eventually. In these 2 years? Rebuild my practice. Work with trauma survivors again. Maybe write that book on PTSD treatment I've been putting off for years. I smiled. Live my life. Miss you. Count down the days. I'll miss you too. His hand cupped my face. But we'll see each other, right? As friends, colleagues, people who are waiting for their time. We can do that, I agreed. Carefully, with boundaries. I'm not very good with boundaries where you're concerned. Then learn, for me, for us. He was quiet for a moment. Will you do something for me? What? Keep this. He pulled something from his pocket, a small velvet box. Orlando. It's not an engagement ring, he said quickly. Not yet, but in 2 years when the waiting is over, I want to give you a real one. This is just a promise. That I'll be there. That I'll wait. That when the time is right, I'm going to ask you to be mine in every way that matters. He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace, a simple pendant in the shape of a key. A key? I asked. To my heart, he said, and though it should have sounded cheesy, it didn't. You unlocked something in me, Serafina, something I thought was broken beyond repair. This is my promise that I'm giving you that key, that in 2 years, I'm asking for yours in return. I let him fasten the necklace around my neck, the key resting just above my heart. 2 years, I said. 2 years, he agreed. Neither of us mentioned that 2 years could feel like forever when you were already in love. 18 months later. The lecture hall at Northwestern University was packed, standing room only for my talk on innovative trauma treatment approaches. I'd been invited as a guest speaker, my recent publications having gained significant attention in the psychology community. As I scanned the crowd, my eyes caught on a familiar figure in the back row. Orlando. He looked different, better. The shadows under his eyes were gone, his expression more peaceful than I'd ever seen it. He was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, looking more like a grad student than the dangerous man I'd first met in his fortress. He'd kept his promises. I knew from the occasional emails we exchanged, carefully professional, carefully boundaried, that he'd been in therapy with Dr. Chen, a colleague I'd recommended, that he'd gradually transitioned more of his business holdings to legitimate operations, that he'd been sleeping through the night more often than not. After the lecture, as students and faculty clustered around asking questions, I watched Orlando wait patiently at the edge of the crowd. When everyone had finally dispersed, he approached. Dr. Conti, he said formally. Excellent lecture. Mr. Caruso. I tried to keep my expression neutral, professional. I didn't expect to see you here. I'm auditing a business ethics class this semester. Thought I'd improve my understanding of the subject. His smile was slight. The lecture was listed in the department newsletter. Business ethics. That's quite a change. People can change. You taught me that. We stood there, careful feet apart, maintaining all the proper boundaries, but the pull between us was as strong as ever. How much longer? He asked quietly. I knew exactly what he meant. 6 months. 6 months. Something heated flickered in his eyes. I can wait 6 more months. Orlando. I know. Boundaries. Professional distance. He took a step back. But when those 6 months are up, Serafina, all bets are off. Is that a promise or a threat? Both. After he left, I touched the key pendant I still wore around my neck. 6 more months of waiting, of maintaining distance, of pretending that what was between us was something that could be contained by ethics guidelines and professional standards. And then we'd finally get to find out if love that started in the darkest circumstances could survive in the light. The 6 months passed both agonizingly slowly and impossibly fast. I threw myself into my work, expanding my practice to focus specifically on trauma survivors of organized crime and domestic violence. I published another paper. Started writing that book I'd been putting off for years. Went on exactly 3 dates with perfectly nice men that felt like betrayal, even though technically Orlando and I weren't together. And through it all, I wore the key pendant. Every single day. Orlando and I maintained our careful distance. Occasional emails about professional matters, one accidental meeting at a coffee shop that left me shaking with want. The ache of seeing him and not being able to touch him, to hold him, to close the distance between us. Dr. Chen told me during one of our own sessions, I'd started seeing a therapist myself to process everything that had happened, that she'd never seen a patient transform the way Orlando had. He's doing the work, she said. Really doing it. Facing his trauma, processing his grief, building a life that's not defined by violence and fear. Whatever inspired this change, he's committed to it. I knew what had inspired it. Or rather, who? Me. The 2-year mark fell on a Thursday in late October, almost exactly 2 years from the night I'd first driven to Orlando's fortress. I woke up to my phone ringing, an unknown number. Hello? Serafina. Orlando's voice deeper than I remembered. It's been 2 years. I know. I'm outside your building. I have something to ask you. Will you come down? My heart was hammering as I threw on clothes, not bothering with makeup or fussing with my hair. 2 years of waiting, of careful boundaries, of denying what we both felt. That ended today. Orlando was standing beside a sleek black car, looking impossibly handsome in a tailored suit. But it was his eyes that caught me, the warmth in them, the hope and fear and desperate longing. Hi, I said, suddenly shy. Hi. He didn't move to touch me, though I could see his hands flex at his sides, fighting the urge. 2 years. 2 years, I agreed. I kept my promises, therapy, legitimate business, learning to sleep without nightmares, becoming someone worthy of you. You were always worthy of me, Orlando. Maybe. But I needed to believe it myself. He took a breath. I've waited 2 years to ask you this properly. Serafina Conti, will you have dinner with me? A real date. No therapy sessions, no ethics violations. Just 2 people who've been in love with each other for far too long finally getting to be together. Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. God. Yes. He moved then, closing the distance between us. And when his lips met mine, it felt like coming home. 2 years of waiting, of longing, of carefully maintained boundaries. And now there was nothing between us but love and choice, and the future we'd fought so hard to make possible. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I have something else to ask, he said. But first, dinner. Let me court you properly. Let me show you the life we can have together. Orlando, you don't have to. I want to. He pulled back enough to look into my eyes. I want to do this right. Every step. I want to take you to dinner and bring you flowers and make you laugh. I want to introduce you to my friends as my girlfriend, not as my therapist. I want to build something real with you, Serafina. Something that's not born from crisis or danger or ethical complications. Something clean and right, and ours. Okay, I whispered. Let's do that. The next 3 months were like something out of a dream. Orlando courted me with an old-fashioned intensity that was both charming and overwhelming. Flowers delivered to my office. Dinners at restaurants where we could talk for hours without fear of being interrupted. Weekend trips to places I'd always wanted to see but never had time for. He introduced me to his world, the legitimate parts. Business associates who treated him with respect rather than fear. Friends who clearly cared about him. A life he'd built that had nothing to do with his family's dark legacy, and I watched him continue to heal. The nightmares came less frequently. The tension that had always tightened his shoulders gradually eased. He laughed more, smiled more, became the man I'd always suspected existed beneath the danger and the damage. 3 months after our first official date, he took me to the fortress, to that same study where we'd had our first session. I wanted to do this here, he said, where it all started, where you first saw me at my worst and decided I was worth saving. I didn't save you, Orlando. You saved yourself. We saved each other. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket, the twin to the one that had held my key necklace. Serafina Conti, I love you. I've loved you since you walked into this room 2 years ago and saw me as a person rather than a monster. I've loved you through every session, every boundary, every moment we had to stay apart, and I want to love you for the rest of my life." He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend forever showing you how much you mean to me? Will you build a life with me that's defined by love rather than trauma?" I was crying, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, God, yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and then we were kissing, and it felt like every moment of the past 2 years had been leading to this, to choosing each other freely, without coercion or crisis, to building something beautiful from the darkest beginning. "There's one more thing," he said, pulling back. "Enzo Silvestri. He was convicted last month, life in prison, no possibility of parole. And the investigation into Marcus's death, the FBI reopened it based on the evidence. They officially ruled it a homicide. Your sister's name was cleared." Fresh tears spilled over. Isabella had died believing Marcus betrayed her. But now the truth was known. He died trying to do the right thing, trying to stop the violence. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me. You're the one who had the courage to turn over those documents. You're the one who chose justice over safety." His hand cupped my face. "You're the bravest person I've ever known, Serafina. And I plan to spend the rest of my life being worthy of you." 6 months later, Italy. The ceremony was small, intimate. Just close friends and the family members Orlando had stayed in contact with. We were married in a small church in Sicily, the place where his grandparents had married, where generations of Carusos had made their vows. But unlike those previous generations, our marriage wasn't about power or alliances or building empires. It was about love, about 2 broken people who'd found healing in each other, about choosing light over darkness, hope over fear. As I stood beside Orlando, wearing a simple white dress with lace sleeves, repeating vows in Italian that I'd practiced for weeks, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that first night in his study, when he'd been nothing but a dangerous patient and I'd been determined to maintain my professional boundaries. Through the crisis that had forced us to confront our feelings. Through 2 years of waiting, of healing separately so we could be whole together. Through every moment of doubt and fear and desperate longing. All of it had led here. To this moment. To this man. To this choice. "I love you," Orlando said in English, deviating from the traditional vows. "Ti amo, Serafina, for all my days, for all my nights, for everything I am and everything I'll become." "Ti amo," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. Through darkness and light, through trauma and healing, through all of it, I choose you. Always. When we kissed as husband and wife, it felt like the end of one story and the beginning of another. The story of how we'd broken all the rules and somehow, miraculously, built something right. That night, in a villa overlooking the Mediterranean, Orlando held me close and whispered against my hair. "No more nightmares, just dreams now. Dreams of our future." And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I slept without fear, without doubt, without regret. Because sometimes, the most ethical thing you can do is choose love over rules. Choose healing over hiding. Choose the dangerous, complicated, messy reality of caring for someone over the clean, simple safety of staying alone. We'd started in darkness, Orlando and I, but we'd found our way to light, and we were never letting go.